The most dangerous people you'll meet where smiles speak softly and praise your goodness right before they say got you sputnik. Not with knives, not with guns, but with guilt, manipulation, and the unspoken rules of a world that rewards the wolves and laughs at sheep. It's a lesson most people learn too late. That being good, kind, or selfless does not protect you. Often it marks you. It signals something to those who are watching. Predators cloaked in civility, who've learned that the easiest targets are the ones who pride themselves on being harmless. This isn't the bitterness of cynicism. It's a deeper question. What if your morality, your very sense of right and wrong, isn't yours at all? What if the virtues you cling to have been engineered to keep you compliant, predictable, and easy to use? Friedrich Nietzsche understood this far too well. He watched a culture hollowed out by its own moral pretensions, a society that elevated weakness and called it compassion, that honored suffering and called it sanctity. In his eyes, the so-called good were often not noble. They were simply tamed. Their virtues weren't as strengths. They were scars, signs that they'd been broken into obedience. And still, they smiled. They were proud of their chains. The predator, smiling patient, knows this. He doesn't need to overpower the good. He just needs to praise them, reward their self-sacrifice, weaponize their fear of being selfish. He knows that the kind person is afraid to say no, that the moral person is terrified of judgment, that the good person's compass doesn't point north. It points outward, always aligning to someone else's approval. This isn't just theory. You've seen it. The boss who piles more work on the reliable one. The partner who manipulates by invoking love. The friend who always needs you but is never there when you break. These aren't aberrations. They're strategies. They work because our subconscious minds are primed to obey the code we've been handed since birth. Be kind, be good, be useful, even if it kills you. And it just might. What if Nietzsche was right? What if morality isn't the antidote to cruelty, but its most elegant disguise? And what if the subconscious mind, the part of you that flinches before you say up, that swells with guilt after standing your ground, isn't betraying you, but revealing what's been done to you? Let's dig deeper. To understand how this trap was built, we must go back to the roots of morality itself, and to Nietzsche's most dangerous idea, that what we call goodness was born from resentment. In the shadows of Western civilization, Nietzsche saw something rotting. Not bodies, not buildings, but values, especially the ones we were most proud of. Compassion, humility, obedience. What disturbed him wasn't just that people believed in these ways, but that they never questioned where they came from. To Nietzsche, this wasn't morality. It was memory loss. In his Genealogy of Morals, he draws a brutal contrast. Master morality versus slave morality. The former is raw, instinctual, affirming. It's the morality of conquerors, creators, and warriors, those who define good by their own power, vitality, and will. The latter, a reactive morality born in chains, a morality invented not by the powerful but by the powerless. Slave morality, Nietzsche argues, is what emerges when the weak cannot fight back. Instead of admitting their weakness, they moralize it. They say the strong are evil, the proud are arrogant, the successful are corrupt. And they say, we, the meek, the suffering, the humble, we are good. This is the morality you were raised on. But it wasn't created to elevate you. It was designed to protect the weak from the strong, not by changing reality, but by rebranding it. Pain became proof of a virtue. Submission became the spiritual discipline. And kindness? It became a kind of weapon, used to shame strength, to restrain ambition, to cage instinct. But here's the deeper horror. We didn't just adopt this morality. We internalized it. We made it part of our subconscious. And we started punishing ourselves long after the original masters were gone. Nietzsche called this the bad conscience. It's what happens when the natural drives of the human animal, desire, dominance, will, aggression, have nowhere to go. They're turned inward. We become our own jailers, our own accusers, our own executioners, all in the name of being good. Think about that. The hunger to rise, to say no, to walk away, to fight. It's still there. But now it's buried beneath layers of guilt. Because we were taught not just that power is dangerous, but that wanting power makes you evil, that choosing yourself is betrayal, that protecting your energy is selfish. But who benefits from that belief? Certainly not you. This is why Nietzsche saw morality not as truth, but as a strategy, a psychological structure forged in suffering and maintained by fear. Not a divine law, but a narrative, one that tells you your instincts are wrong, your will is dangerous, and your rebellion is sin. And if but you listen closely, you'll hear the echoes of that narrative in your everyday life. Every time you hesitate to assert a boundary, every time you swallow your anger, every time you say yes when you mean no, it's not just politeness, it's programming. Nietzsche didn't want us to become monsters. He wanted us to remember that we are animals and that our instincts are not shameful. They are sacred. The problem isn't our strength. The problem is that we've been taught to use it against ourselves. And that teaching didn't come from nowhere. It came from centuries of resentment, dressed in the robes of righteousness. But what happens when that resentment becomes your subconscious? When you've inherited not just a story, but an identity shaped by fear and guilt? Then the question is no longer just philosophical. It's personal. How much of your goodness is truly yours? To answer that, we have to open a deeper door into the subconscious mind itself, where your morality is not just a belief system, but a set of invisible chains. You don't remember when it started? That twitch in your gut when you disappoint someone, the guilt that creeps in when you say no, the compulsion to apologize, not because you've done harm, but because you simply chose yourself. These reflexes didn't come from nature. They were installed. The subconscious mind, that vast underground archive of everything you've learned to fear and worship, is not a neutral observer. It is a sponge, absorbing judgments, values, commands, and punishments long before your conscious mind ever had the chance to consent. By the time you could speak, the programming had already begun. Sit still, be nice, don't talk back, share. Even if you don't want to, say sorry, even if it wasn't your fault. Each phrase, repeated thousands of times, carved grooves in your psyche. Not just rules for behaviors, but rules for being. You weren't being taught how to function in a society. You were being taught who you must be to be acceptable, to be good. And here's the trap. The more you obeyed it, the more love you received. Or at least the illusion of it. Praise, approval, acceptance, they were conditional, tied directly to how much of yourself you were willing to suppress. Over time, this love became indistinguishable from survival, and the behaviors you adopted to earn it became second nature, automatic, subconscious. Nietzsche understood this better than most psychologists of his time. He called it the internalization of instinct, the turning of primal drives inward, where they rot and ferment into guilt, shame, and self-hatred. The bad conscience, he warned, is not an ethical refinement. It is a sickness, a slow, beautiful suicide. But the most insidious part, the more broken we feel, the more we seek virtue to fix it. We try to become better people, kinder, quieter, more agreeable, more selfless. We try to outgood our inner torment. But no amount of goodness will ever silence a subconscious that has been trained to associate your power with danger. Your bad conscience doesn't want you to heal. It wants you to remain manageable. Look around you, a society obsessed with moral purity, a culture of performative empathy, fake humility, self-censorship framed as virtue. These are not the signs of a healthy moral system. They're the signs of internalized control. It's not enough for the powerful to dominate with force anymore. They don't need to. They've taught you to police yourself. And the guards in your head were your parents' voice, your teachers, your church, your society. They remind you not to get too angry, not to be proud, not to want too much, it's not to be dangerous. Even in your silence, you're obeying. And the cost? You lose touch with your own will. The voice that says, I want. The fire that says, I deserve. The boundary that says, enough. Instead, you wait to be told who you are. But what if that waiting is the problem? What if the moral framework you use to define yourself is the very thing that keeps you small? What if your subconscious, buried in decades of obedience, has never actually known you, only the version of you that others found useful? This is where Nietzsche's warning becomes unbearable in its clarity. If your moral instincts are not your own, if your guilt has been outsourced, if your goodness is just a reaction to trauma wrapped in tradition, then who are you really? Not the child, not the citizen, not the friend, the lover, the self-sacrificing soul. You are a question wrapped in armor, a flame taught to pretend it's a candle. And somewhere inside, that flame still remembers what it means to burn for yourself. But to awaken it, to tear the programming out by the root, you'll need more than rebellion. You'll need vision. You'll need strategy. You'll need to see the world as it is, not as you were told it should be. Which is where Nietzsche meets his dark mirror, Machiavelli, where Nietzsche peered into the soul and saw a battlefield of instincts, repression, and forgotten strength. Machiavelli stared coldly at the political theater and saw no soul in it at all. Only masks, blades, madness, and the unchanging hunger for power. Two thinkers, one obsessed with the internal war of becoming, the other with the external game of control. But beneath the surface they converge. Both knew a truth that makes most people recoil. Morality is often a costume worn by those who seek advantage, not truth, not justice, strategy. To Machiavelli, the world was not a moral playground. It was a chessboard soaked in blood. Those who ruled did so not because they were good, but because they were effective. If they were loved, it was a bonus. If they were feared, it was insurance. If they were both, they were unstoppable. But Machiavelli never pretended this was admirable. He simply said, this is what works. Nietzsche, by contrast, wasn't content with mere realism. He was after transcendence. He dreamed of the Übermensch, the one who has broken free from inherited values and created their own. Someone who doesn't play the game better, but changes the board entirely. Someone who is dangerous, not because they are cruel, but because they are free. Still, the intersection is clear. Both understood that power is real, that virtue is often camouflage, and that if you don't master the rules, you become a pawn for those who do it. This isn't just political, it's personal. Every day you are surrounded by games of power, disguised as relationships, careers, ideologies. In the office, those who climb often aren't the kindest, they're the most calculated. In love, the one who needs less usually controls more. In activism, even noble causes are often used as leverage for influence, identity, or status. Machiavelli would tell you, expect this, prepare for it, learn how to wield power, or it will be wielded against you. And Nietzsche would say, mismade, don't stop there. Don't just become clever. Become sovereign. Don't just survive the game. Outgrow it. Not by rejecting power, but by reshaping what power means. Power not as domination over others, but as the full, fearless expression of your will. Power is self-mastery, and yet both would agree. The first step is this: stop believing that goodness will save you. The predator smiles. He's read the prints. He knows how to use charm as camouflage, virtue as leverage, and pity as a weapon. He understands the moral map better than you and uses it to trap you inside it. But the moment you see the game, you begin to awake. You stop flinching at the word manipulation. You stop applauding for being strategic. You start asking, is this person's kindness real or tactical? Is their weakness sincere or a performance? And then the mirror turns. You begin to ask, is my You don't need to become cruel. You don't need to discard empathy, but you do need to see clearly. And sometimes clarity looks like coldness to those who've grown addicted to your compliance. Machiavelli teaches you how to survive in a world that punishes naivety. Nietzsche teaches you how to become someone no longer afraid to be seen, not as good, but as whole. Together, they offer the key to unlocking a dangerous freedom. But the predators are already watching, and they've known your kindness is a weapon. They just know it's not yours. They don't need to hate you to use you, they just need to know you'll hesitate. The moment you flinch, when you pause before asserting yourself, when your voice softens to make others comfortable, when your boundary becomes a suggestion instead of a wall, they see it, maybe not consciously. But the predator doesn't operate in logic, he operates in instinct. And his instinct tells him, you're safe to exploit. Your kindness isn't invisible. It radiates off you like heat. The way you listen more than you speak, the way you offer to help before they ask, the way you take on blame just to keep the peace. In a world that rewards aggression and performance, these traits should be sacred. But they aren't. Not here, not now. Here, kindness is currency. And if you don't price it properly, others will take it for free. Think back. The coworker who always needed your quick favor. The partner who twisted your empathy into emotional labor. The parent who demanded obedience in the name of love. These aren't rare events, they're patterns. You were conditioned to believe that being needed is proof of value, that being generous means never closing your hand. But look closer. Who benefits from that belief? Your subconscious doesn't ask. It obeys. It's been taught to equate love with sacrifice, respect with silence, safety with submission. So when someone praises your goodness, you glow. And when someone calls you selfish, you shrink. This is the soft machinery of control. Nietzsche would say, of course they use your kindness against you. You gave them the tools to do it, and you will call them virtues. You've been taught that sacrifice is noble, that martyrdom is admirable, that the highest form of love is total surrender. But that teaching didn't come from saints. It came from systems. Religious, political, domestic, that needed you to know. And they dressed up your obedience in sacred robes. Because if you refuse to suffer for others, you're cold. If you refuse to be exploited, you're cruel. If you dare to put yourself first, you're dangerous. But that's the truth, isn't it? You are dangerous. And the predators sense it. That's why they flatter your virtue. That's why they praise your loyalty, your patience, your selflessness. Not because they value them, but because they want to keep them active. A tame lion is easier to pet. This isn't hot paranoia. It's pattern recognition. Look at the dynamics in your life. Who treats your time like it's theirs? Who loves you just a little more when you're compliant? Who accuses you of changing the moment you assert a boundary? Now look deeper. Who taught you that protecting yourself is selfish? Who trained you to see your voice as a threat? Who made you believe that peace is more important than truth? Machiavelli would smile here, because this is the game. This is how power operates in the modern world. Not with swords, but with scripts. And the most effective script is the one that never lets you know you're acting. The one that convinces you that being devoured is your highest calling. But this isn't about abandoning kindness. It's about transforming it. Kindness without strength is currency in a rigged market. Kindness with strength, that's sovereignty, that's choice. That's no longer needing to be good for others to feel whole. That's knowing when to open your hand and when to close the fist. Nietzsche didn't call for cruelty. He called for courage. He didn't want us to become tyrants. He wanted us to become free, and freedom means saying, my time is a mine. My energy is a mine. My body, my words, my will, they are not public property. The moment you internalize this, everything shifts. You begin to notice who withdraws when you stop bending. You begin to see the manipulations for what they are. Performances, rehearsed pleas, moral guilt trips wrapped in sentimentality. And most terrifying of all, you begin to realize how often you've done it to yourself. Because the predator isn't just outside. He lives in your subconscious. He's the one who says, "Don't upset them." The one who whispers, "Be kind or you'll be alone." The one who flinches at your power and calls it pride. But now you've seen him. And the moment you see him, the spell begins to break. The real danger isn't in becoming unkind. The real danger is that you will spend your life being used by those who mistake your morality for permission. So let them call you selfish. Let them accuse you of changing. Let them mourn the version of you that made their lives easier. You're not here to be useful. You're here to be whole. You wake up one morning and something is missing. Not a thing. Not a person. A compulsion. The need to please. The fear of being disliked. The reflex to justify every decision that centers yourself. It's gone. And in that stillness, something else emerges. Will. Not the will of a tyrant or the craving of an ego, but the quiet, steady pulse of someone who is no longer living on the borrowed values. This is the Nietzschean awakening. It doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in collisions between your instincts and your programming, your desires and your guilt, your silence and your scream. And in the rubble, you begin to realize the rules you've lived by were not divine. They were designed to keep you humble, to keep you manageable, to keep you useful. And now you're rewriting them. Nietzsche didn't want you to become immoral. He wanted you to transcend morality, at least the morality that was handed to you by priests, parents, and systems too afraid of your far. He called it beyond good and evil, not a descent into chaos, but an ascent into authorship, a life where you don't ask, "Is this allowed?" but "Is this true to who I am?" This is what it means to move from slave morality to Übermensch. Not a villain, not a saint, but someone who has integrated the chaos and carved out their own meaning. And make no mistake, this kind of self-possession is threatening, because those who relied on your self-doubt will rush to reel you back in. They'll dangle your old roles in front of you like shackles dressed as bracelets. You used to be so caring. Oh, you've changed. You're not the same. They're right. You're not. You're no longer living in response. You're living in creation. And that means your kindness becomes sacred again. Because it's no longer automatic. It's no longer currency. It's no longer a leash. You can give it without need. You can withdraw it without guilt. And that is dangerous. Because the world doesn't fear cruelty. It expects it. What it fears is independence, the kind that cannot be bribed by flattery or cowed by shame. The kind of kindness that is not afraid to draw blood, if that's what it takes to stay sovereign. This isn't the end of morality. It's the rebirth of it, from the inside out. Not a code you inherit, but a compass you build. Not a system that tells you who to be, but a soul that asks, "Who are you becoming?" The Nietzschean awakening is brutal. It will cost you illusions, relationships, and sometimes your peace. But what it gives you is beyond measure: a spine, a voice, and a self that cannot be used against itself ever again. Be kind, yes, but never safe. Because in a world that feeds on the docile, kindness without strength is a scented trail to your own undoing. They will praise your gentleness while picking your bones clean. They will call you noble as long as you remain useful. And when you stop, they'll call you selfish, difficult, unloving. Wear those words like armor. Let them speak. You have remembered something ancient. That virtue without will is slavery dressed in silk. That goodness, to mean anything at all, must be chosen, not conditioned. And that the most terrifying kind of person is not the cruel one, but the one who can be cruel and chooses otherwise. This is the new morality, not inherited. Forged, not performed. Embodied, not safe. Sacred,